to prepare you for that. So on the video, okay, you should have had, I did talk about, where is it? The advantages of buying. Sorry, I'm going to jump a little bit. On page 3, I would have highlighted some advantages of buying, okay? On page 3, you should have written that down. And I'm not sure if anybody, did I talk about equity there? Is equity, yeah? Do you know what equity is? Did I explain that? You can be honest. You can say, I have no idea. And I'll be okay with that answer. But I did say that there's a fixed monthly payment. Maybe I'll just show you that, and then we'll go over to renting. Just a quick review, okay? So on page 3 this is, right? What are some advantages of buying a home? Fixed monthly payment. You build equity. This is huge, right? I'm going to put a star there. I would like this to be almost like your go-to answer for owning a home. You build equity. Equity is very powerful, and I will show you that. Other than that, I would say don't buy a home. If there wasn't equity, I would say just rent, okay? You can own pets. You don't have to worry about the landlord kicking you out. I might repeat myself a little bit, but I used to live in an apartment. I couldn't even have a fish. No pets. Like, it was just like no pets. And then I could hear barking at night. I'm like, I wonder how that works, right? You may have a yard or have some privacy. This one is if applicable, because you can own a condo. You probably don't have a yard if you're on the second floor, right? But if it's a house, then you would say, yeah, that's probably a good reason to have a yard. Privacy, where's the privacy coming from? I don't know if you've lived in an apartment. I had some noisy neighbors, like above me. Like every morning, like they were just like, you could hear them walk and stuff. And so that, it drove me crazy, right? So the privacy of that, or sometimes you hear yelling, right? Or just music in the background. So that's what I mean, like when you own a home, condo, it would also not really apply, but when you own a home, for the most part, you have that privacy. You have your fenced in yard, and so that's probably a good advantage. Another thing that I don't mention here, I want you to add that. This is huge. A reason you want to buy is you can renovate at will. That's all I'm gonna say. If you want to tear down a wall, it's your place. You go for it. Okay. If you want to paint the walls, you go for it. I used to live in an apartment. My wife wanted the baby room to be painted a certain color. I had to go ask for permission, sign something, and when I signed it, it says when you move out, you have to paint it back to the original color. So I was like, oh my goodness, right? That's going to be a lot of work. You don't think of it now, but when you move, you're so busy already. Now you have to paint, right? So renovating at will when you own, that's beautiful. You can just do whatever you want. New kitchen, new bathroom. You do whatever you want. You paint it, whatever you want to do, you can do that, right? So that's another advantage of buying. Let's go over to renting, because I don't think I talked about renting. So let's go to 4. Page 4. No noises now. What are the advantages of renting a home? I will ask you to cross out a home, because it could be apartment or house, right? So this is just in general, we'll talk about renting, okay? I will just highlight a few things. When you rent, the good thing is you don't need a large down payment, right? You don't need a large down payment. Anybody rented before? Anybody know what you need to do when you rent? What's the first thing they're gonna ask you for? There's a certain amount they ask you for, and that's called a damage deposit. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's usually half of rent. Like whatever rent is, they'll be like, you gotta put half down. and they will cash it in, and then when you move out and the place is still in good condition, you get it back. But that's a small amount compared to a down payment for a house. Okay, so you don't need a large down payment. I will just add that later. Let's do that later. I'll put some points down later on. Another thing I want you to highlight is if you're traveling frequently, if your job requires you to move a lot, right? If you're traveling frequently and you have to relocate often, then consider renting, okay? It gives you a greater flexibility to live where you want, okay? Can you just like move out whenever you want in an apartment? No, you still have to, like you usually sign a 1-year lease and then you're kind of like locked in for a year. You can move out before then, but you need to find someone to take over your lease. But it's a lot easier than a house, than relocating if you own a house. There's also more flexibility to where you want to live, okay, because it is more affordable, maybe more affordable renting in the long term. So if you want to live in like Osborne, like in the Osborne area, right? Wellington, somewhere there, buying a home is really expensive. Probably out of everybody's reach, right? But if you want to live there still, you can rent an apartment or a house and still be able to afford it. And why would you want to live there? Well, because you can bike almost everywhere there. You can walk and just go do your grocery. Like you don't need to drive a long distance. That's probably why you want to live there. Or you just like that community in general. Maybe you like the schools, right? Okay, another thing. I'm highlighting here. When you rent, you may be able to move into a rental soon after finding it, okay? I will say this, moving out is easier for a tenant than a homeowner. Another good thing about renting is there's a lot less upfront costs when comparing buying a home. And we're going to talk about that later. Another thing, this is huge, when you rent, you don't have to pay for maintenance. So if there's a leak in the roof, you don't panic because you just call the landlord and say, it's leaking right now, it's raining outside, right? So you have a leak, landlord pays for it, you don't pay for it. When it's a house, totally different story. Okay, so here you go. Some bullets, right? I would have 2 of these on my study sheet. You don't need a large down payment. Did I talk about the percent for a down payment? Did I tell you that you need to have 5% down payment these days? Or no, when buying a home? I may not have mentioned it. Okay, I'll talk about that as we go along, so don't worry about it. Lower startup costs. This is a big one. So I will talk about down again, but this is the big one. No land transfer tax. That is huge. Land transfer tax, you'll find out when you buy a home, that's thousands of dollars that you need to pay when you buy a home. When you're renting, you don't have to worry about it. And next one is lower maintenance. Landlord's responsibility. And another good thing about renting is that utilities are often included in rent. Okay? What are utilities? You may ask. It would be your water, your heating, etc. Sometimes even Wi-Fi. Like some apartment blocks have free Wi-Fi already, so you don't pay for internet, which is getting pretty expensive these days, right? Like unless you're on a promotional price, you're paying like 70, 80, 90, even $100 a month on on internet, and some have that already included. Another one would be you don't pay property taxes. This is a little bit of a, do you really? You don't get the bill because it's also a couple thousand a year. It's probably in the rent somewhere, but you don't like get that huge bill every year when you pay property taxes, okay? So if you have that, you're pretty good. Now, I may talk about disadvantages later, but I want you to use these 2 pages to come up with disadvantages. Oh, can I add one more? I hope you have space here. Easier to relocate. I think that is a must. So I will try to squeeze it in here. Easier to relocate. Don't say it's like, oh, you can move whenever you want. Don't say that. It's just a lot easier to relocate. Okay. I want to talk about equity. I know I don't have much time, but I need you to understand equity, and I'll talk about it more down the road, but let's keep going here. I actually made this slide just for you here. 7. Here, I honestly, just for life, you need to know what equity is, because you're going to hear it a lot as you get older and you make financial choices. Okay? The numbers are not up to date. Okay? The numbers are outdated by a big shot. Okay? But let's say this is at the beginning, right? Beginning. You purchase your home, and the value of your home is $100,000. Okay? And let's say you owe so this bar from the bottom all the way to the top, that bar represents $100,000. Watch this. You got to look up here. Don't look at me right now. If this is 40,000, that's what you owe. This is what you owe. Okay? If this is 40,000, then this is, you can barely see it, but please write it in, 60,000. Okay? So if you buy your home for 100,000, you wish you could buy a cheap house like that once upon a time. Okay? If you 60,000 is what you own, the part of the home you own. Okay? So 60,000, let's say you pay off 60,000 and you owe 40,000, the 60,000 is your equity right at the beginning. That would be awesome to have a $60,000 down payment, right? And only owe 40,000. Now, pay attention to this part. As time goes by, right, the value of your home, hopefully, historically speaking in Canada, this has been the case. The value of your home goes up over time. And what happens to the amount you owe to the bank? Hopefully, as you're making your payments, the amount you owe is going down. So this wedge in here is your equity, right? So let's make a cut here. Let's make a bar right in here, somewhere in the middle. Okay? And let's say the value after 10 years, let's say, the value is 150,000. And let's say you owe the bank, let's write it right in here, you owe them 20,000 after 10 years. You start at 40, okay? If the value of your home is 150,000 after 10 years, how much is your equity going to be? Just do the math. If this is 20,000, how much more do you need to get to 150? 130, right? So your equity after 10 years, and this is actually going to be more, right? Equity increased. Okay. What does the 130 mean? Well, unfortunately the 130 you don't have it in your pocket, folks. It's not like you have it in your pocket, but if you were to sell it at this point, you would have to pay the bank 20 grand and you would get to keep 130,000. Twofold. Why is that? Because you started paying off your mortgage and the value of the home increased at the same time. So can you imagine this after like 30 years? Right? After 30 years, you might have like 300,000 or more. Okay. So this is equity right here. That's the time you can move out. Yeah. This is your equity right here. It's always the part that you own. I will talk more about this because time. We're running out of time. I'll just say this. Remember this. You can borrow money against your equity. Okay? So more about that tomorrow. Thank you guys.